Okay. Hold on for a second. Okay. That's peace. Okay, I think I got it now. Just trying to set this up. My first time going live. Peace. That's peace. Yeah, so this is my first time going live, and I wanted to build about the importance of customs and how they serve as a means to provide structure and to shape and define our life cycles as human beings. The basis of this build is peace, G, peace, John. I just recently published an article on my website called In Celebration of Us, and I'm talking about the importance of customs. If you want to get a chance to check it out, just go to Google and just put in my hashtag that I always use, Atlantis build, and it'll take you directly to my website so that you can read the article that I just recently published. So anyway, wanted to talk tonight about customs and the importance of customs. And the reason why is because when you come into knowledge of self, or when you're becoming aware of who you are, your ancestry, where your people came from, and your perspective is changing in regards to your worldview and how you've assessed things in your life. Maybe it's your family dynamics, how you were raised. It can be any number of people activities, your diet, your style of dress, how you've approached relationships with others, child rearing, if you're a parent, things that you've seen as principles and values. Essentially assessing all of those things, when you start to become aware and gain more knowledge of who you are, you face a dilemma. And it's a dilemma because some of the things you start to realize are the complete antithesis or are in conflict with what it is that you've may been taught your whole entire life. And you have a decision to make. Now that you know better, you have to be better or do better. Get better, as my brother John oftentimes says. You have to make a decision. And sometimes easy, sometimes it's not so easy. For me personally, when I started to learn more about dietary choices that weren't in the best interest of my growth and development, some things was easy to cut off. Pork, reading various different pork labels and stuff, that was easy. Beef, cut that off. But there may have been other different things in my diet that it took much longer for me to be able to master. And it didn't happen in such immediate sense, So there's challenges when you become more aware and you start making these decisions that are life changes. Some things come easy, other things don't come so easy. So in gaining knowledge of self and assessing all your various different people activities, you start to realize that there's ultimately a clash in culture. And there are certain things that we've been indoctrinated into believing, principles or values that we've adopted that are not in the best interest of our growth and development. And they are the counter narrative, or they are irreconcilable differences in comparison to what we're learning right now. And we have to leave some of those things alone. Now, here's one of the challenges. When you look at Western society and the way that we've been indoctrinated, the things we've been taught to believe, principles as well as values, when a person is incarnated or their consciousness is brought into the form of the physical body, when you're born, so to speak, also sets into motion a sequence of events that are customarily designed to demarcate or to distinguish significant events along that life cycle. In other words, when you look at Western society, when a person's born, some of these significant events along a human's life cycle is very arbitrary. You know, a person is acknowledged when they are at the age of consent. You know, they can have sex. At another point in their life cycle, they're acknowledged because they can drive a car, or they're acknowledged now in that particular point in their life cycle because they can drink alcohol, or they can smoke, or they can enroll in the armed services, or any of those number of arbitrary events are defined as landmarks along a person's life cycle. A sweet 16, you know, graduate from high school. You know, you have all of those various different things which are oftentimes not really reflective of our cultural worldview. You know, as we come into knowledge of self, the same thing happens every year with the designation of certain holidays. Those points along a person's life cycle throughout a year also serves that same particular purpose of being defined as landmarks that reinforces a certain perspective or consciousness that is traveling along that life cycle. So people celebrate the new year in the middle of the winter at midnight. You know, people celebrate Christmas or Easter or St. Patrick's Day or any of these number of holidays, which are landmarks along a person's life cycle throughout the course of a year. Now, what is the importance of these customs? Well, when you're looking at a life cycle, what they do is they provide structure as well as moments to define or reinforce certain principles and values that represents the social norms or the psychological orientation of the society. Now, when a person comes into knowledge of self, a lot of us begin to not participate in these various different landmark events that represent the life cycle of Western society. So we ain't practicing Christmas. We not doing the New Year's thing. We damn sure ain't doing no St. Patrick stuff because we not Irish. And then it also is reflective in just the personal life cycle when it comes to, oh, I'm not celebrating like when this age of consent or something like that, or sweet 16, or, you know, a person can go out drinking now, so we gonna go to the bar or something like that. Nah, we don't celebrate stuff like that. So what ends up happening is, in gaining knowledge of self, becoming more aware, it leaves a customary void in your life. You know, some of you may have grown up with people who were Jehovah's Witnesses, or they might have practiced different religions in school. And one of the things that you can recall, if you weren't a participant like that, is there were times when your class might have been celebrating something or whatever, or going somewhere, going there, and that person that was Jehovah's Witness was sitting over there not participating, with a look on their face like, damn, longing to be a part of something like that, you know? And I bring that up because in a religious context, some people can relate to what I'm actually talking about. You know, gaining knowledge of self is more of a cultural journey, you know, cultural expression, and it's not religious. But some of those kind of parallels exist in terms of non-participation. So as you become more aware, and as you cease to participate in some of these life cycle events that serve as landmarks to demarcate that journey of growth and development, it leaves a void there. And some people, in seeing that void, strive to substitute that empty space by not really participating in these same holidays, by not really participating in these life cycle events individually that people go through in terms of, oh, you of age now, let's go out drinking type stuff, or you got your license, let's celebrate this, that, and the third. You know, some of the people find a way to fill that void by reluctantly quasi participating in the same particular Western traditions and customs that are not reflective of having knowledge of self. So you have that group of people, right? And, some of us may have gone through that before, you know? But then you also have that group of people who don't participate in anything anymore. And they strive to find a substitute to replace what they now have a void in their life with. The same way some people do relationships. They're used to constantly being in a relationship. So having somebody is better than having nobody at all. And they just get somebody to fill that void, which a lot of times is more unhealthy than the shit that they was doing to begin with. You know what I'm saying? So you have that group of people too who just find substitutes. So in essence, they may not celebrate Christmas, but they'll run down to the dollar store and buy everything that they could find about Kwanzaa and celebrate that in their house, and that's some of the things that I actually write about in this article, which I'm encouraging y'all to go and check out. Just go to Google, put in my hashtag Atlantis build. It'll take you to my website, Asia, and then you can read, the whole article that I'm basically just adding on about briefly right now. So you have that group of people who don't really participate in these Western traditions anymore. Then you have people who strive to find these substitutes just to fill some space that they're not participating anymore. And then you have the people who are like the Jehovah's Witnesses in the classroom when we were children. They're not participating. There's a void, but there's nothing in its place to create some structure and to help define that person's life cycle. And that is really the reason that I wrote the article, because having knowledge of self from the perspective of the 5%, some of us go through all of those different phases. Some of us don't really celebrate, you know what I'm saying, even though that we're all in some of these holidays and all this other stuff. And then you have some of us that strive to find some replacements, which is oftentimes generic, just to fill some void. But then you have those of us that just don't do anything, which means there is really no customs that define structure or that shapes the psychological landscape or destiny of this person's life cycle. So there's nothing to really reinforce that identity, not throughout the year, unless they're celebrating the Father's Born Day or what some of us may consider to be year one of our formal inception, October 10th, or different other significant honor days. You may have some 5%ers recognize, but for the most part, a lot of 5%ers just don't participate, and there's this empty void. And one of the things that I've done is, over a decade ago, I created what is known as a divine union rite. Now, the divine union rite is similar to marriage, but it's a non-religious cultural expression that allows people and empowers people with the ability to celebrate their unity or their marriage in the mind from a cultural perspective that is not within the context of a religion, and which gives outsiders also an opportunity to see the beauty of our principles and our values. And I did that because I saw that there was a void there. And I saw some 5% using these quasi rites or ceremonies which are steeped in Christianity or something else, celebrating marriage in the mind and celebrating our principles and values. And I never wanted to do anything like that, but there's no reason to critique something if you're not striving to offer a viable solution. So I created that, and to this day, people around the globe have utilized that divine union rite as a template that they engage in a bond publicly. And I'm definitely proud of that. More recently, I had a younger queen being born, and I did a naming ceremony for her. And one of the reasons why I created that is because I saw same thing, some of the 5% or other people who have knowledge of self. When a child would be born, they would be in a foreign environment, typically some, Western facility or hospital, and then, you have foreigners handling your child. And then they taking pictures and selfies in this foreign space to memorialize that significant moment in our children's life cycle. And one of the things that we say is the babies are the greatest. And I didn't want that for my children, So the naming ceremony, in part, was a means to celebrate the arrival or the incarnation of my young queen. So she wasn't born in no foreign facility or around foreign people or anything like that. She was born in a safe space at home. She had a midwife. Her mother had a midwife as well as a doula. The doula is one of my god brothers, Earth. And she's not vaccinated, did everything in a very natural way that would be more customary to the perspective of a person that has knowledge of self. And like I said, that was important because that moment needs to be demarcated or defined as a significant landmark from the cultural perspective of our people. Not from the cultural perspective of anybody else, because that ultimately serves in the best interest of the people who represent those customs, who represent that society. Again, once you become aware or gain more knowledge of self, you learn that there is a clash of cultures. There are certain things, in the words of my enlighteners, enlightener, life justice, that are irreconcilable. Certain things that are fundamentally different, and there is no way that you can do one thing and do something else that is the complete antithesis or the complete opposite at the same exact time. You have to either do one or the other. And those are some of the decisions that you learn to make, which is oftentimes hard when it comes to becoming more aware. And and it's not to say that everything in Western society is wrong or not right and exact, because when you look at Western society, a lot of it, especially a lot of the good parts, are the remnants, or they are elements of a much older culture, classical and indigenous societies that got it right. So some of the right things that you may oftentimes see in this society are derivatives of what we actually produced as first world people, or the fathers and the mothers of civilization. So in our language of the 5%, one of the things that we say is you have to preserve the best part for yourself, not care about the poor part. And that's the exact type of perspective that's important to have engaging Western culture. Now, here's one of the problems. When you come from a people whose ancestors were enslaved, where everything was taken from them, including their language, you had an arrest of their development. You had an interruption of their cultural continuity. So the more generations that you have enslaved, the further away you get from your origin and knowing who you actually are. All of your people activities become something that is reflective of those who have enslaved you. Some of the same type of things occur with people who live in a society who have been colonized or dominated by people. They still may have some sense or remnants of their original customs and traditions because it's in their homeland. But when you take a people away from where they originally came from, you make them into something entirely different than what they are. So because of that, there is no reference point when it comes to customs or traditions or culture outside of what you've been immersed in. So many of us as original people who went through the transatlantic slave trade, who are the generations of those who were enslaved, unless we've been exposed to something outside of Western society, our entire perspective is based upon the foods that we've eaten. and what we've been fed about ourselves. There's no reference points. A person who immigrated to this country, they have points of reference when it comes to them assessing Western society, their traditions, their customs, their people activities. They can say, oh, I'm Yoruba, and this is what we've been doing in our homeland for thousands of years, and I see the way that they're doing it over here. As descendants of those who were enslaved, we never had that benefit to have that point of reference outside of the institution of slavery because we became something other than ourselves. So by the nature of that, it is impossible to have a wise perspective of what is actually going on and what has actually happened to us. It requires someone to give us an outside perspective so that we can have a point of reference. So having that perspective gives you the ability to discern. Discernment is judgment, right judgment, and that is what wisdom is. So in order to make wise decisions, you must have knowledge as a foundation. If you don't have knowledge or that foundation, you can't make wise decisions. You don't have the ability to do that. And in order to do that, you have to have other points of view. You have to have an outside perspective. So many of our people generationally have been in this society without an outside perspective, only to the extent of us being engaged by people who are able to show us something other than what we've been fed, physically as well as mentally. And that has been a challenge for us. So in considering that, once we start to gain knowledge of self and become more aware of who we actually are, it becomes a never-ending inner journey of constantly assessing what is culturally sound and what is in the best interest of our growth and development and what is not. It's something that you go through each and every day. You don't even have to leave the comfort of your own home if you're doing that. If you're pulling up your cell phone, you're looking at various different news stories on social media or on Google or whatever, you're looking at that through the lens of striving to assess whether or not this is in line with your culture or if it's not in line with your culture and what you should do about it. What you should do with that information. That's before you even walk out of the house. No? And some things that you're exposed to are easier to retort or to deal with than other things. And that's the importance of why we say knowledge of self, because you're constantly expanding your awareness. You're constantly learning new things, and what it's actually doing is building your immunity to deal with the different attacks on your identity. You're immunizing yourself. So when you see certain things online, you see right away, I don't believe that bullshit. Because this, that, and the third are the actual facts. If you're watching something on television or in a movie, you know what is right and exact and what isn't because you've increased your awareness by learning much more about yourself, which is immunizing you or building your immunity to withstand attacks on your identity. So that's one of the purposes that knowledge of self actually serves. It also empowers you to be able to successfully retort people who may be striving to attack whatever your perspective actually is. And that is also one of the reasons why when it comes to customs or traditions, some things may be a little bit more difficult to end or to transition out of, because some of those customs and traditions may be intimately connected or attached to your family, to other different traditions within your community. They may be attached to workplace culture, or maybe even a relationship that you have with somebody. And to break that custom or tradition is also breaking the continuity of some social norms that you may have been expressing, sometimes for years. So it may be customary for your family to get together on the night before Christmas. You've been doing that 25 years. And it may be a good time with your family and stuff like that, but the more you start to learn, you realize, like, yo, I don't want to participate in that anymore. So now you have to deal with engaging your family and striving to disconnect some of these very intimate entanglements with that custom or that tradition. It may be hard. You know, some people may be able to walk away and say, I ain't doing that no more. Other people, that may be very difficult. You may be in a relationship with somebody. You might have been married for some years now. And you're starting to learn something new and you realize, like, oh my God, I gotta hit a damn reset button. Or shit I've been doing all of these years is wrong. But your relationship might be comfortable. And you have to assess, like, damn, this is going to be taken like I'm just being ungrateful or I'm rocking the boat or whatever. It's going to be like I'm being an asshole or just trouble-ish or whatever. You have to make a decision. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? So a great part of the things that I do with my videos, my articles, the books that I publish, some of the animation that you've been checking out, I've constructed some community building courses that you can take online. They're self-paced courses. You can see all of that over at my website, is to provide people with practical methods of accessing growth and development. Practical methods. You know, a lot of times when you come in tune with different people and they have that hierarchy perspective, they treat things like no one can come through the Father except through me. Or, you know, they're the king on Turd Mountain or something. Or they're the expert and you only need to come to them. And then sometimes they sit and ration out little bits and pieces of information to keep you coming back. It's bullshit. I don't do none of that. You know, out of all of these hundreds of videos that I've been putting up all of these years, I never thought about, you know what, yo, I'm going to get me a green screen. I'm going to put it in the background. And, you know, I'm going to put this elaborate introduction and be sitting here doing, no. That ain't me. I want to show people that there is no transition between what's online and what's offline. It's one and the same. And unfortunately, you see many people who have created a avatar online that's not really reflective of what they actually do each and every day. And that is very misleading. It's deceiving to a lot of people. You know? I was having a conversation with somebody recently, and she was asking me about a person who was doing videos online, and this woman that was speaking, she was talking about a lot of different things, right? And I'm sitting there listening to the woman. So the woman asked, the other woman that put me on to her asked me what I thought. And I was telling her that real growth and development happens in a very private place. You know, it happens when a person individually takes the initiative to save themselves. I mean, people could get on here all day and be inspirational and say this, that, and the third, blah, 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 but it really is on the person to take the initiative to do something about whatever condition that they see themselves in. And that place happens in a very intimate environment, you know? And that is where you really have the most strength when it comes to impacting the lives of people. So the things that I share are deliberately done in a practical way to empower a person to do something about it in a very private way. In a very, very private way. Because that is where you're really ultimately going to see the results of whatever it is you're striving to apply to your life, so that you can be better than you were yesterday. You know, and just sometimes people don't offer that. You know, they want to be the person that you're looking up to, and they're not really interested in striving to empower people. They're not striving to give people access to the exact same information and life experience that they have had. They're not trying to do that. A lot of them is just striving to make themselves rich off of your labor and just keep you coming back. You know, it's kind of like some of these conspiracy theorists. They are ambulance chasers. You know, they always got some new conspiracy spinning or whatever, and they have to keep the shit going because that's where, you know, they make their money at. That's their gravy train. You know, but that ain't me. You know, I want people when they come in contact with me is they see exactly what I'm showing them. If I'm showing you videos of me being awarded for something or doing a speech here or working with youth here, that and the third, you come to where I live, I'm going to be in the midst of whatever it is that I'm showing you that I'm doing. I'm not staging any of this, and if you came and visited me where I live at, I'm not going to be in a cubicle doing some telemarketing. If that's what I do, I'm going to show you that I do that. But I don't, you know, and through the years, I've strived to be consistent, to show people that there is no transition between what's online and what's offline. It should be consistent across the board. And one of the most effective ways for anybody to grow and develop is to consider what are the practical things that you can do. It may not be fabulous. It may not be extravagant. It may not be on an awning for everybody to see, but it's your consistent work and investment each and every day and in each and every way that allows you to ultimately see the results in your growth and development. And like I say all the time, it does not happen overnight. The only thing that happens overnight is the night. So I'm going to see if I could, I don't see any comments right here, but, oh, okay. Okay. I just had to press the button, you know what I'm saying, so I can start seeing live comments. But I appreciate y'all tuning in. Like I said, this is the first time that I just went live. Shit, I might start doing this a little bit more often as well. But again, I encourage y'all to go to my website, check out my newest article in celebration of us. And I talk a little bit more about the importance of customs and how they provide a sense of structure as well as definition along our life cycle. So when you think about it, a person's life cycle, if you look at it as a timeline, right? Along that entire timeline, there are certain significant events that give a sense of purpose and direction to that person's life. When I said that people celebrate arbitrary things like when they are at an age of consent, when they can drive a car, they can drink alcohol, they can enroll in the armed services or whatever, those events demarcate or define that person's direction when it comes to their life cycle. It gives a sense of purpose and direction. That's on an individual level. Now, when you're looking at it as a collective level within this Western society, look at the holidays that people celebrate throughout the year. You know, one way of putting it is these are mass spells that are used to socialize the people, to reinforce the social norms and the status quo. So that's something that happens just on a yearly basis. So if a person is practicing those customs and they are also adhering to some of these arbitrary things along their life cycle, their life is invested in a worldview or a perspective that serves the interests of those who created that. And it ultimately serves the purpose of reinforcing the institutions, the way the resources are directed, and ultimately the economy that is reflected in the people who created those customs. So when you gain knowledge of self, when you become more aware, when you recognize that you come from the first world people, you are the fathers and the mothers of civilization, you have to redefine that. Because all of your intelligence, all of your investment is going into the coffers or is reinforcing the institutions, the resources, and the economy of people who are outside of your cultural perspective at this point. That is the reason why defining ourselves, Kujichagulia, various different other principles and values that we have are important, because you are defining your life cycle along the lines of your own personal and collective growth and development, not along the lines of somebody else who gave it to you to reinforce their society. Everybody else knows that, but people who are descendants of slaves. Because being descendants of slaves or coming from a place where you've been colonized, you have no other points of view. You have no other reference points. All you know is what was passed on to you generationally that does not come from your people. So a part of knowledge of self is investing in the exploration of who you actually are. What is the true self? What is the true self? What is my origin? How did we arrive here? And in learning those things, you begin to discover not only the power of your story, but you also recognize the resilience of your people to overcome adversity, as well as the infinite potential that exists within them to be more or beyond whatever the conditions that we've been in. So I will that this was inspirational, it was empowering, and it was educational. And I thank y'all for taking a moment to tune in. I'm definitely going to do this a little bit more often as well. And like I said, go check out my newest article in celebration of us. And definitely share it with others, because I give a lot of insight into the importance of us having our own